"You don't belong here anymore, Emma. You made your choice." Rachel's voice cut through the chatter like glass against stone. Forks paused midair. My mother kept slicing her roast, each motion neat and silent. My father's eyes sank toward his plate, as if the potatoes had something worth studying. No one spoke. No one ever did when Rachel decided the tone. I stared at the cranberry sauce bleeding across my plate, pretending to find it fascinating. My lips tightened into something that looked like a smile, though it felt like swallowing glass. "Guess I did," I said softly, just enough for her to hear. No one laughed, not even the cousins who usually found comfort in awkward moments. The clock above the doorway ticked too loudly, a metronome of restraint and shame. I set my fork down before my hand started shaking. "My name is Emma. I'm 36, a graphic designer from Portland. I came home for Christmas after a year of silence, thinking maybe distance could soften old wounds. Instead, it only gave them sharper edges." Rachel leaned back in her chair, smiling that polished smile she reserved for church committees and family photographs. "We just don't want any drama this year," she said. "Mom's been through enough." Mom didn't look up. She never did when someone tried to make peace by erasing me. I took a sip of water. It didn't help. The lump in my throat wasn't thirst. Rachel kept talking, casual and cruel in the same breath. "You can't expect to disappear for a year and just walk back like nothing happened." Her words fell like snow, soft but cold enough to burn. "I didn't disappear," I said quietly. "I just stopped being useful." That earned me a few raised eyebrows. My father's hand twitched near his knife, but he said nothing. His silence wasn't protection, it was habit. He'd learned long ago that avoiding conflict kept the house from shaking. The roast smelled like rosemary and regret. I used to think holidays meant comfort. Lately, they just felt like performance art. Rachel laughed, that shallow sound that used to charm teachers. "Always so dramatic, Emma. You left, remember? You moved away. You're the one who decided you were better than this family." I looked at her then, really looked, at the tight skin around her eyes, the exhaustion beneath her confidence. "No," I said. "I just decided I couldn't keep pretending." The table went still again. I caught my mother's hand falter slightly over the knife, her eyes flicking toward me for a second, then retreating. It's strange how silence can hurt more than words. If you've ever been the quiet one in your own family, you'll understand. Stay with me. I pushed my chair back slowly, the sound dragging against the wood. "Thank you for dinner," I said, even though I hadn't finished a thing. Rachel smirked like she'd just won something. Dad cleared his throat. "It's late, maybe." But Rachel interrupted. "Let her go if she wants to." And that was it. Permission to leave my own family table. Outside, the air bit at my cheeks. I could still hear the laughter from inside, muffled through the walls. The porch light flickered once before steadying. I stood there longer than I should have, waiting for something. Maybe the sound of footsteps. Maybe someone calling my name. Nothing came. The old truck groaned as I turned the key. The headlights swept across the window, catching Rachel's reflection as she poured more wine. No one turned around. I told myself it didn't matter, that I'd gotten used to being the ghost they only noticed when they needed one more chair filled. But the truth sat heavy in my chest, the kind of ache that doesn't show up in x-rays. As I drove down the narrow road lined with frozen pines, I caught one last glimpse of the house in my rearview mirror. Warm lights, familiar shapes, the world I used to belong to. And then it vanished behind the bend. No one came to the door. When I moved into the cabin, I told myself it wasn't running away. It was peace. That's what I called it, even when the silence felt too heavy to breathe in. The place was small, one bedroom, a wood stove that took forever to catch, and windows that looked out toward endless gray pines. Still, it was mine. No one's voice here but mine. No one to tell me I didn't belong. I remember the first morning there. I woke up to fog so thick it pressed against the glass. My coffee tasted stronger than usual. Or maybe it just tasted like freedom. I stood outside barefoot, feeling the wet ground under my feet, And I thought, maybe this is what peace sounds like. Nothing. Weeks passed, then months. No calls, no messages, no birthday reminders. Rachel's birthday came and went. I sent her a message anyway. Hope it's a good one, I wrote. I waited all day, pretending I wasn't waiting. The phone stayed dark. I texted Mom next. Thinking of you today, miss your cooking. The message showed delivered, but never read. That word used to break me. Now it just sat there like a quiet stone. At first, the silence stung. Then slowly, it turned into background noise. I stopped checking the phone every hour. I stopped counting who didn't call. I started talking to the walls when I cooked, laughing at my own mistakes. The sound of my voice filled the space in a way no apology ever had. I built routines, morning walks, small grocery runs, evenings by the fire with my sketch pad. I thought about designing again, maybe freelancing for someone who didn't care about family politics or Christmas dinners. There was something healing about the smallness of my world. Still, some nights, when the wind crept through the cracks, I'd think of that dinner table, Rachel's tone, my father's silence, my mother's knife against the plate. I'd wonder if they ever thought of me. I told myself I didn't need them anymore, but lies sound different when you repeat them out loud. The first winter storm hit early. Rain slammed against the windows like it wanted in. The cabin creaked, old wood complaining at the cold. I wrapped myself in a blanket, phone in hand, pretending I was just scrolling out of boredom. Social media was a bad idea. I knew it before I even opened it. But habit is a stubborn thing. Rachel's face appeared first. Her perfect family lined up under Christmas lights, matching sweaters and stage laughter. Mom was there too, her hand on Rachel's shoulder, both smiling like peace had always been theirs. The caption read, "Family always comes first." My throat tightened. I scrolled further, more photos. My father at the grill, the cousins, even the family dog. Every face familiar, every expression pretending I never existed. The rain got louder, or maybe my heartbeat did. I stared at the words again. Family always comes first. I wanted to laugh, but it came out as something smaller. Not quite laughter, not quite breathing. Part of me thought about posting something in return, something quiet and sharp, but I didn't. That wasn't who I wanted to become. Instead, I set the phone down. I watched the fire burn slow, the logs collapsing in on themselves. The smell of smoke filled the room, and I thought about how silence can reshape a person, how it carves out what's weak until only truth remains. I picked the phone back up. My thumb hovered over the app, one photo after another, birthdays, dinners, smiles, all the things they'd said I walked away from. Maybe I did, but they closed the door. I just learned to live on the other side. I deleted the app. The screen went dark, my reflection faint against the glass. And then, like a ghost in the quiet, I heard it. My mother's voice, soft but sharp enough to cut through time. You made your choice. I used to think loyalty was a kind of currency, that if you worked hard enough, kept your head down and stayed grateful, people would see your worth. For years, that's what I did. I showed up early, stayed late, and carried more weight than anyone noticed. My father's accounting firm wasn't just his legacy. It was supposed to be ours. When I started, I was 23, fresh out of college and full of ideas. You can handle the small clients, Dad said. Learn the ropes first. I did. Then I handled the big clients, the messy ones, the ones who called on weekends. I built systems, rewrote proposals, and trained new hires. Each time I asked about a raise or a title, Dad smiled and said, "Patience, Ema. Good things come in time." I believed him. For almost 12 years, I believed him. Then one morning, Rachel called. "Did you see the post?" she asked. "What post?" I was knee-deep in invoices, my eyes tired from staring at screens. "Dad announced Adam's partnership," she said. Her voice carried that mix of excitement and pity I'd learned to recognize. "Big photo on Facebook. Champagne, handshake, the works." I remember staring at the wall, my mind blank for a full minute. Adam had joined 3 years ago. He was good at smiling, shaking hands, talking golf. I was good at keeping the business running while everyone else took credit. That night, I congratulated him anyway. "You deserve it," I said, even though I wasn't sure he did. He smiled, that easy grin that came with being everyone's favorite. "You'll get your moment, sis. Dad just wants stability." I wanted to believe that too, but something inside me broke a little. Stability had always meant silence. My silence. The following week, I asked Dad if we could talk. We sat in his office, the one with the leather chairs and the framed degrees. I told him I'd been thinking about my future, that I wanted to discuss partnership, or at least acknowledgement. He didn't even look up from his papers. "Ema, you've been invaluable here. But partnership isn't just about work. It's about leadership. You're good at the details. Adam handles the vision." That line stayed with me. You're good at the details. I'd built the vision he was talking about. I'd given years of my life to something that was never meant to include me. When I left, no one said much. Dad shook my hand like a polite stranger. Adam patted my shoulder. "Take a break," he said. "You've earned it." They posted a farewell message on the company page 2 days later. Not for me, but for an intern who'd worked there 6 months. I remember staring at that post, the photo of smiling faces, and realizing that some people erase you long before you're gone. For a while, I drifted. Rent, groceries, bills, every number scared me. I took on freelance design work just to stay afloat. At first, the jobs were small. A bakery logo, a local cafe menu, a church flyer. But something shifted. My clients started referring others. One job turned into 3, then 5. My evenings filled with color and light again, not spreadsheets and silence. There was a freedom in building something that didn't depend on anyone's permission. Each design felt like a small act of rebellion. I stopped checking the firm's page. I stopped wondering if they missed me. Still, sometimes at night, I'd think about that office, the hum of printers, the smell of burnt coffee, the sound of my father's voice saying, "You're good at the details." It would echo through me like a bruise that refused to fade. One evening, I sat at my desk, sketching a logo for a boutique. The rain outside was steady, tapping softly against the glass. My inbox pinged. I almost ignored it, assuming it was another client inquiry. But when I saw the name, my stomach tightened. Adam. The subject line was blank. Just his name. I hesitated before clicking. The message was short. 5 words. No greeting. No explanation. "You'll regret walking away." For a long moment, I just stared at the screen. Then I leaned back, letting the words sink in. I didn't know if it was a threat, a warning, or guilt trying to find a voice. But something in me hardened. I closed the laptop slowly, the rain still falling outside. I wasn't sure what I would regret yet, leaving or believing I ever belonged. The cabin started to feel like mine in ways no house ever had. Every sound, every shadow belonged to me. The creak of the old floorboards, the hum of the kettle, even the wind pressing against the windows, they became familiar, almost comforting. For the first time in years, I didn't have to measure my words before speaking or wonder what version of myself would be acceptable that day. I could just exist. Work had picked up again. My designs were small but steady, and each payment, no matter how modest, felt like proof that I could build something without anyone's permission. I'd sit by the window with my laptop, coffee cooling beside me, the forest shifting colors with the season. It was quiet, but it wasn't empty. Not at first. After what happened with Adam's message, I decided to install 2 security cameras, one by the porch, one by the back door. Not because I was afraid, but because peace feels fragile when you've spent your life walking on eggshells. I wanted to protect what little I had finally found. Most nights I'd cook something simple, soup, sometimes pasta. I'd eat by the soft light of a lamp, listening to the rain or the hum of the heater. The silence didn't bother me anymore. It started to feel like a friend that didn't demand anything from me. Then one afternoon, a letter arrived. A plain white envelope with no return address. Just my name written in my mother's looping handwriting. My chest tightened the moment I saw it. For a second, I thought maybe it was an apology, or at least some acknowledgement. I was wrong. Inside was a short note. Just 3 sentences. Hope you're doing well. We wanted you to hear it from us before you saw the listing. The house has been sold. That was it. No explanation, no invitation, no mention of the years I spent under that roof, helping Dad repaint the porch, Mom in the garden, the smell of cinnamon rolls on Sundays. I reread the note until the words blurred. They'd sold my childhood home, the one place I thought would always exist, even if I didn't belong in it. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time, the letter spread out beside my half-finished sketch. The paper looked too small to carry so much loss. I imagined strangers walking through those rooms, measuring walls, opening cupboards, commenting on fixtures I once helped install. My throat ached, but no tears came. Grief wasn't loud anymore. It was quiet, polite, familiar. Later that evening, I walked outside. The air was cool, carrying the smell of wet pine. I looked up at the sky, stars faint through thin clouds, and whispered to no one, I guess I really was temporary. The words felt strange leaving my mouth, like saying them made them real. Maybe I had always been the placeholder, the helper, the listener, the one who filled the gaps until someone more important arrived. I went back inside and folded the letter neatly, tucking it into a drawer instead of throwing it away. Part of me wanted to forget it existed, but another part needed to remember. Some pain deserves a place to rest. Dinner was simple. Soup again, with a slice of bread that had gone a little stale. The fire crackled faintly in the stove. I ate slowly, letting my thoughts drift between memories and the steady rhythm of the rain. I thought about the kitchen in that old house, the one with the yellow tiles I used to hate. I could almost see Mom standing by the sink, humming the same tune she always did. For a moment, I let myself believe I was still there. Then the illusion broke. My phone buzzed beside the plate, a soft vibration, then a single chime. I picked it up. The screen lit up with a notification. Motion detected. Front porch camera. My hand froze midair. The spoon slipped back into the bowl with a quiet splash. Someone, or something, was outside. The phone buzzed again, the same notification glowing across the dark screen. Motion detected. Front porch camera. My heart beat slower than my thoughts, each one catching up with the next as I opened the feed. Rain streaked across the lens, blurring the picture like smeared ink. At first, I thought it was just the wind. Then I saw him. Adam. Standing outside my gate, soaked through, hands buried in his pockets like he was trying to hide the guilt that came too late. He looked different. Thinner, maybe. Older somehow. The kind of tired that comes from more than lack of sleep. For a moment, he just stood there, staring at the cabin as if it might vanish if he blinked. Then he rang the bell. Once, twice. The sound cut through the quiet, sharp, and hollow. I didn't move. I couldn't. I just sat there on the couch, eyes fixed on the little square screen, watching the man who told me I'd regret walking away. The same man who never once called when I did. The rain fell harder, pooling at his feet. He looked around like he wasn't sure what he was doing there. His hand brushed through his wet hair, and then, without another word, he turned and walked back down the road. The headlights of his car flashed once before disappearing into the trees. I replayed the footage 3 times. Each time I told myself I was just making sure it was really him. But that wasn't true. I wanted to hear that silence again. The space between the bell rings and his leaving. The moment he realized I wasn't coming. My hand trembled slightly as I set the phone down. I thought about unlocking the gate, calling out, asking him what he wanted. But some part of me knew it wasn't peace. People like Adam don't show up in the rain unless they've run out of roofs to hide under. I sat in the dark, listening to the storm roll past the cabin. The sound used to calm me. Tonight, it just reminded me of everything that used to knock at my door without asking. When morning came, the world outside looked washed clean. The puddles glittered, the trees glistened. But inside me, nothing felt lighter. I worked a few hours, forced myself to answer client emails, but my focus broke every few minutes. His face, the look in his eyes, regret, maybe, or need, kept flickering in my mind like a weak signal that refused to fade. By evening, I'd almost convinced myself it was over. Maybe he'd come to make peace and lost his courage. Maybe it was something practical. Dad's firm, the house, a financial mess. Whatever it wasn't my responsibility anymore. I'd left that weight behind. Then the phone rang. I froze at the sound. No one called me anymore except clients or telemarketers. The number was familiar, though. My chest tightened before I even answered. Hello? Emma. The voice was unmistakable. Rachel. I hadn't heard it in months. Even through the static, it carried that tone she always had, like she was talking down from a higher step. Rachel, I said. Didn't expect to hear from you. I'm not calling to talk about the past, she cut in. We need to meet. Her words hung in the air, clipped and cold. Meet? I asked. Now you want to meet? It's important, she said, her voice tight. Adam's been having a hard time. Things have changed. We need to talk. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. You had a year to talk. Why now? Emma, please, she said, her tone softening for the first time. Just meet me, tomorrow, at the diner near the highway. Noon. I didn't answer right away. Part of me wanted to hang up, to end it the way they'd ended me. Quietly, without ceremony. But curiosity is a dangerous thing when it comes to family, especially when it dresses itself as closure. Fine, I said finally. Tomorrow. There was a pause on her end. Thank you. Then the line went dead. I sat there, phone still in my hand, staring out the window. The forest looked calm again, the world pretending nothing had happened. But my gut told me peace wasn't what waited at that diner. It never was with them. Funny how the same people who vanish when you're broken always find their way back when they need something. What would you do in my place? Rachel was already sitting when I walked into the diner. Her phone lay face down on the table, her nails tapping against the glass like she was counting seconds. The smell of coffee hung heavy between us. She didn't look up right away. You look different, she said finally. Older, maybe. I smiled faintly. That happens when people stop carrying everyone else's weight. Her lips pressed together. I didn't come to fight. Good, I said, sliding into the booth. Then don't. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The hum of voices and clatter of dishes filled the space where warmth used to live. Rachel reached for her coffee, then stopped halfway. It's about the firm, she said. Things are bad. I waited. She always started with half a confession, hoping I'd fill the rest. Dad's been covering losses for months, she continued. Clients pulled out. The new tax law hit us harder than expected. Adam tried to fix it, but what? Her eyes flicked toward the window. He took out a loan, mortgaged part of the lake property. It took a second for the words to land. The cabin? She hesitated. Your share. He used your name, too. I leaned back, my pulse steady but cold. Without asking me? It was supposed to be temporary, she said quickly. He thought he could turn things around before you found out. Then the market dropped. I stared at her, searching for even a hint of regret. And now you're here because the bank's calling. Her silence was answer enough. I folded my hands on the table, the same way I used to in staff meetings when Dad dismissed my ideas. You should have come to me before signing anything. Rachel sighed, the sound sharp with frustration. You don't understand, Emma. The firm is Dad's life. Mom's health bills, the mortgage, the payroll. Adam's been drowning. You have money now, a business that's doing well. You thought I'd clean up your mess, I finished for her. Her tone softened, like guilt could be disguised as love. You're still family. Family. That word again. The one they used like a key to open any locked door. I looked at her, really looked. The woman who once told me I didn't belong at my own table was now sitting across from me asking for help. Not because she wanted me back, because she needed something. How much? I asked quietly. She blinked, caught off guard. What? How much do you owe? Almost 200,000, she said, barely above a whisper. But if we can cover the interest and hold the property another 6 months, the firm can recover. I took a slow breath. So you want me to pay off a loan made in my name, without my consent, for a business I no longer work in? Her voice cracked. Emma, please, this isn't about blame. We all made choices. I held her gaze. No, you made choices. I just get the bill. She looked down at her hands. The silence between us stretched thin. For a second, I thought about saying yes, about being the good daughter again, the fixer, the one who stayed calm while everyone else fell apart. But something in me had changed. I'd learned that peace built on silence isn't peace. It's permission. I stood up slowly. I'll think about it, I said. Rachel exhaled like she'd just won something. Thank you. I knew you'd. Don't, I interrupted. Just let me think. She nodded, eyes glassy but rehearsed. As I walked out, I caught our reflections in the diner window. Two women shaped by the same house, carrying different kinds of damage. The drive back felt longer than usual. The road twisted through the trees, rain starting again, soft and persistent. I thought about Dad's voice, steady and commanding, about Adam's easy smile, about every time I'd been told to wait my turn. When I got home, the cabin felt colder. I poured a glass of water and set my bag down, my mind still turning over her words. Then, almost without thinking, I opened the drawer where I kept my old files, the bank papers from years ago, the ones I'd kept more out of habit than trust. I spread them out on the table. The ink had faded slightly, but the signatures were clear. My name, written twice, one in my handwriting, one not even close. The letters curved wrong. The spacing was off. Adam's work. My throat tightened as I traced the line of that forgery with my fingertip. I'd been erased before, but this was different. This time they'd written over me completely. The next morning I drove into town with the papers folded neatly in an envelope beside me. The air felt heavy, the kind that presses against your chest even when you're breathing fine. I didn't call ahead. Some truths need to be told face to face. The bank smelled of polished wood and stale coffee. The manager, Mr. Hayes, looked up when I entered. His expression shifted the moment he recognized my name. Emma, he said carefully, like he wasn't sure which version of me he'd get. I need to see the mortgage file, I said. The one under my name. He hesitated. That's confidential unless… It's my signature on the paperwork, I interrupted. Or at least someone's version of it. You'll want to look at it before I take it to the police. His face paled a little. He motioned for me to follow him to his office. The blinds were half closed, the desk cluttered with forms and a cup gone cold. He typed something into his computer, printed a few pages, and slid them across the table. There, he said. That's the copy on file. I looked down. My name sat in black ink, slanted wrong, loops too wide, letters uneven. A bad imitation pretending to be trust. Who submitted this? I asked. He shifted in his chair. Your brother said you'd signed off on it remotely. He provided the identification. What kind of identification? He opened a drawer, pulled out a photocopy. My old driver's license, the one I lost years ago. My stomach tightened, but I kept my voice steady. You accepted this? He swallowed hard. It matched the records, Emma. He's your brother. We had no reason to suspect. No reason except the law, I said quietly. He looked away, embarrassed. I'm sorry. Truly. I folded the papers carefully and slipped them back into the envelope. You will be, I said, standing. Soon. Outside, the wind had picked up. I sat in my car for a long time, staring at my reflection in the windshield. For years, I'd let their choices right over mine. This time I'd make the story my own. I didn't rage. I didn't cry. I made a list. I drove to a small law office near the courthouse. My friend Laura ran it. We'd met years ago at a networking event, two women quietly trying to survive in rooms built for men. When she saw me, she smiled until she saw my face. What happened? Family business, I said simply. And I need your help. She led me inside without another word. We sat in her small office, papers stacked like walls between us. I handed her the envelope. She read silently, her brow furrowing deeper with every page. This is forgery, she said at last. Clear and deliberate. I know. Do you want to press charges? Not yet, I said. I just want proof. Enough to make them listen when I finally decide to speak. Her eyes softened. You always were the quiet one. Still playing the long game? I smiled faintly. This time, it's not a game. We worked through the afternoon, scanning documents, logging timestamps, collecting every trace of communication that could tie Adam's name to mine. Laura recorded a statement for me to keep, just in case things get messy. Her voice was steady, mine calm, detached. By sunset, I felt something I hadn't felt in months: clarity. Revenge didn't always start with fire. Sometimes it began with order. When I got home, the air was still. I poured a cup of tea, sat by the window, and watched the last light fade through the trees. The camera monitor blinked softly on the counter. I checked the feed once, out of habit. Nothing but quiet and night. For the first time, I didn't feel afraid of being alone. Solitude had sharpened me. It had given me back the pieces they'd chipped away. I turned off the lights, ready to sleep. The kettle still hissed faintly on the stove. That's when the phone buzzed again. One single tone that froze me mid-step. Motion detected. Front porch camera. I unlocked the screen. The image came into view, grainy under the porch light. Two figures stood outside the gate, their faces pale against the dark. Mom, Dad, both looking straight at the camera, both waiting. The motion alert came just after midnight. I almost didn't check it. I told myself earlier that night I needed sleep, that I was done waiting for ghosts to knock. But curiosity has a cruel way of sounding like instinct. I picked up the phone, tapped the screen, and the porch camera flickered to life. At first, I saw only the shadows, then faces. My parents, both standing in the rain, their clothes damp and clinging. My mother's arms were wrapped around herself, her shoulders shaking. My father stood beside her, pale and still, eyes fixed on the cabin door. Rachel hovered a few steps back, pacing, like she couldn't decide whether to knock or run. For a moment, I thought maybe it was another illusion, another trick of memory. But then my mother's voice broke through the static. She'll forgive us, she whispered. Her voice was fragile, like glass that already knew it was going to shatter. She always does. I didn't breathe. The rain distorted the feed, streaking their faces into soft blurs, but I could still hear her, clear and trembling. We'll talk to her tomorrow, she said. She's just hurt. Emma always understands once she calms down. My father didn't answer. He just shifted his weight, looking older than I remembered. Maybe guilt had started to show on him, or maybe the years were catching up. His silence said more than any apology could. Rachel stopped pacing long enough to mutter something I could barely catch. She won't open the door, she said. Not after what we did. What we did, she said. Not what Adam did. Not what they allowed. What we. My mother turned to her sharply, a quiet panic in her voice. Don't say that. Not here. Rachel exhaled, shaking her head. Mom, it's over. You know it is. The screen flickered as lightning flashed, turning them into silhouettes for a second. Three people I used to love standing at my doorstep. United not by love, but by desperation. I watched them longer than I should have. I told myself it was for clarity, for proof, for the calm before I decided what to do. But the truth was simpler and harder. I watched because part of me still wanted them to knock again, to call my name, to mean it this time. I'd spent years pretending I didn't crave their approval, convincing myself I was fine without it. But that single line, she always does, opened something raw in me, because she was right. I always did. I was the one who kept the peace, who forgave first, who believed people could change if you just showed them enough patience. But forgiveness had become their currency, and I'd been the only one paying. I leaned back in the chair, staring at the rain crawling down the glass. The sound used to soothe me. Tonight, it sounded like knocking, faint, rhythmic, persistent. My mother wiped her face with her sleeve, her gaze flicking toward the camera, though she didn't know it was there. She looked smaller than I remembered. "We can't lose her," she said softly. "No matter what happened, she's still our daughter." The words stung more than I expected, because they weren't lies. They were just too late. My father finally spoke, his voice low but steady. "Let's go," he said. "Standing here won't change anything." He placed a hand on her shoulder, guiding her away. Rachel followed after a moment, glancing back once, not at the door but toward the trees, as if she sensed the unseen watching her. The headlights cut through the rain, then faded down the road. The feed went still. The only sound left was the wind pressing against the cabin walls. I sat there in the dark, the glow of the phone lighting my face, my heart caught between ache and resolve. For a second, I imagined opening the door, calling after them, telling them to come in, to dry off, to talk like a family that hadn't turned on itself. But I didn't move. I couldn't. Because love without respect isn't love. It's leverage. I let the feed run a little longer, the empty porch flickering in grayscale silence. Then I reached over, pressed the screen, and ended it. My reflection stared back at me in the black glass, calm and clear. "Not this time," I whispered. I met Laura in the city on a Thursday morning. The sky was overcast, gray like paper left out in the rain. She had already ordered coffee by the time I sat down. No greetings, no small talk, just the quiet weight of two women who knew exactly what needed to be done. She slid a folder across the table. "Everything you sent checks out," she said. "The signatures, the transfers, even the timestamps. Adam was careful, but not careful enough." I flipped the folder open. My name was there again, printed neatly above forged signatures. Page after page, proof of how easily trust can be rewritten. "How bad is it?" I asked. Laura sighed, leaning back. "Bad enough that the bank should have caught it. Worse because your family's firm handled the transactions. That makes it criminal, not just careless." Her words didn't shock me. I'd stopped being surprised a long time ago. What I felt instead was stillness, the kind that comes right before a storm starts to build. "What happens next?" I asked. "We file," she said, quietly. "Let the system do the talking this time." I nodded. It sounded almost merciful. The city outside the window looked blurred, people rushing past in coats and briefcases, each one trying to outrun something invisible. I used to be like that, thinking if I moved fast enough, the pain wouldn't catch up. Now I move differently. Slow, deliberate, like every step mattered. Laura pulled another file from her briefcase. "I also traced the loan repayments," she said. "Adam funneled money from your parents' accounts to cover part of it. That means they knew." My throat tightened, but I didn't flinch. "He told them I'd approved it, didn't he?" She hesitated, then nodded. "They signed supplementary forms confirming consent." The air between us felt heavier. I looked down at my hands, wondering how many times those same hands had handed over kindness to people who signed it away. Laura spoke softly. "You could confront them, or—" "No," I said. "No confrontation. Not this time." She studied me for a moment. "You're sure?" "I'm sure. They feed on reaction. I won't give them that satisfaction." Her smile was small but knowing. "You've changed." "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe I've just stopped apologizing for what they did." We went over the details for hours. The complaint, the evidence chain, the scheduled filings. Every step felt clean, precise, necessary. There was no rush. Revenge doesn't need noise to be powerful. It only needs truth, sharp enough to cut without warning. By the time we finished, the sky had darkened. The rain had started again, soft at first, then steady. I walked out with the folder tucked under my arm, each page a quiet piece of justice. I didn't call anyone on the drive home. I didn't tell Rachel or my parents, or even the neighbor who waved as I parked. Some truths belong to silence. The days that followed felt unreal. I went through the motions: work, coffee, walks with the dog, pretending life hadn't changed. But every night, I'd sit by the window and imagine the moment the first notice would land on their desks. The shock, the scramble, the denial. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about balance, about finally setting the scale right. Laura texted me updates every few days. Filed, received, under review. Each message came like a heartbeat, slow but steady, marking the countdown to impact. I didn't celebrate. I just breathed a little easier. A week later, I woke up to the sound of my phone buzzing. Not a call, a notification. I turned it over and saw the headline glowing in the dim light. Local firm under investigation for financial misconduct. Internal family conflict suspected. I read it twice, my pulse calm, my expression still. The article didn't name names, but it didn't have to. Everyone in town would know exactly which firm they meant. My father's, my brother's, our families. I set the phone down on the table and watched the morning light crawl across the floorboards. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like the forgotten one. I felt like the truth finally had my voice. Sometimes truth doesn't explode. It seeps in, slow and cold. Do you think people like them ever realize what they've done before it's too late? The first call came before sunrise. My phone lit up across the room, Rachel's name flashing again and again until I finally answered. Her voice hit me like a wave. "What did you do, Emma? Do you have any idea what you've started?" I didn't respond right away. Her words spilled faster than thought. "The firm's drowning. Dad hasn't slept in days. Mom's crying nonstop. And Adam..." She choked on his name before continuing. "You've ruined everything." I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the dark window. "I didn't ruin anything," I said quietly. "I just stopped cleaning up what you all broke." "You sound proud of this." "No," I said. "Just done." She hung up before I finished breathing. By mid-morning, my voicemail was full. My father left the first one, his voice low, trembling with that practiced authority he used to make me feel small. "Emma, whatever this is, it has to stop. Meet me. Is at the office. We can fix this before it gets worse." I deleted it. Adams came next. "You think you can drag me down? I'll bury you in court. You're nothing without the firm, Emma. You always needed us." I let that one play twice. It didn't hurt the way he meant it to. It just sounded like fear wearing arrogance. Outside, rain pressed against the windows. The world felt hushed, like even nature knew to stay quiet while everything I'd left behind collapsed under its own weight. I made tea, set it on the table, and turned on the news. Their faces filled the screen, the same people who once dismissed me as the too emotional one. The anchor's voice carried no sympathy. "Local accounting firm under state investigation for financial misconduct. Allegations include falsified documents, internal theft, and breach of fiduciary duty." Hearing their names read aloud should have felt triumphant, but it didn't. It felt final. My phone buzzed again. A text from my father. "This is family business. End it before it's too late." I typed one line back. "It already is." Then I turned the phone face down. I didn't post anything, didn't answer questions, didn't feed the rumor mill. Silence became my weapon. Every word they threw into the public only echoed back louder. That night, Laura called. "They're panicking," she said. "The investigation's moving fast." "Good," I said. She paused. "Are you okay?" "I think so." I watched steam rise from my cup. "I didn't destroy them, Laura. They just met the mirror they built." She exhaled, a slow sound that felt almost like understanding. "Be careful, Emma. People cornered by truth tend to lash out." "I know," I said, "but I'm not the one who should be afraid anymore." When the call ended, the cabin felt quieter than usual. The fireplace crackled, the tea had gone cold, and outside the rain had stopped. But the silence didn't feel empty. It felt earned. Days passed, and the noise of their downfall grew. Articles, statements, denials, all circling the same drain. I didn't read most of it. I just went on with my work, answered clients, and kept living. There was something peaceful about watching chaos from a distance, knowing you didn't have to run toward or away from it. Then came the last message. Rachel again. Her name appeared on the screen, and for a second I thought of ignoring it, but curiosity won. "You'll regret this when we're gone," she wrote. I stared at the words for a long time. Gone could mean so many things: distance, destruction, despair. But none of them belonged to me anymore. I closed my eyes, exhaled slowly, and whispered to no one in particular. I already did. The storm started before midnight, the kind that makes the world sound like it's cracking open. I'd gotten used to the quiet hum of rain against the windows, but this one felt different, harder, heavier, impatient. When the alert buzzed on my phone, I already knew. I didn't move right away. I just stared at the glowing screen, my heart pacing faster than the thunder outside. I opened the live feed. The porch camera flickered before sharpening into focus. There they were, my family, my father, soaked and hollow-eyed, my mother clutching her coat to her chest, Rachel behind them, hair plastered to her face, trembling in the downpour. They looked smaller than I remembered, like time had finally taken something from them it could never return. My father stepped forward first. "Please, Emma," he said, his voice breaking through the rain. "We have nowhere else to go." My throat tightened. For a second, I almost thought I'd imagined it. That same man who once said I'd never survive without them now stood begging outside my door. Rachel wiped her eyes, glancing toward the camera. "We lost everything," she shouted. "The accounts are frozen. The press won't stop calling. We just need to talk." I didn't move. I didn't answer. My fingers hovered over the phone like they were deciding between mercy and memory. My mother stepped closer, her voice trembling. "Emma, honey, please, let us in. We didn't mean for it to go this far." Her words cracked open something soft and aching inside me. For so long, I had wanted to hear her say my name like that, gently, without judgment, without pretending I was an obligation. And yet, now that she had, it sounded like a prayer too late to reach heaven. The camera light blinked, catching their faces in flashes of silver rain. My father tried again. "You're punishing us," he said, quieter now. "But you've made your point. Enough." I whispered to myself, "This isn't punishment." My voice sounded foreign, as if someone else was speaking through me. "It's just truth." He banged on the door once, weakly. "We're your family." The word echoed through the cabin, hollow and sharp. Family. The same word that had been used to silence me, control me, erase me. I thought about every time they told me I was dramatic, ungrateful, selfish. Every time I'd been told to understand, to forgive, to stay quiet. Now, the quiet was all I had left, and it was finally mine. I turned up the volume, listening as their voices tangled with the storm. Rachel sobbed something I couldn't make out. My father muttered curses under his breath. My mother tried to calm him, whispering, "She'll open it soon. She always does. Always." The word hit like a stone dropped into still water. They still believed I was the same girl who'd bend before she'd break. Maybe they had to believe that, because the alternative was facing the woman who finally stopped forgiving them. I pressed my palms to the counter, trembling, my breath shallow. Watching them plead felt cruel, but so had everything they'd done in the name of love. The difference was that I wasn't lying to myself anymore. "Please," my mother said again, voice thin, body shaking. "We can start over." Something in me fractured at the sound. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to say no. I wanted to stop feeling anything at all. Then it happened. Her legs gave out. One moment she was standing. The next she crumpled onto the porch, her hand still clutching the railing as she slid down. Rachel screamed her name. My father knelt beside her, shouting for help through the rain. I froze. My body wouldn't listen. My mind screamed to stay still, to remember everything, to hold my boundary just once, but the sight of her lying there, that frail, familiar shape, tore through every wall I'd built. I set the phone down slowly, my hands trembling so hard the screen nearly slipped. I walked to the door, each step heavier than the one before. The sound of rain grew louder, swallowing the air. I reached for the handle. My reflection stared back at me in the glass, eyes red, jaw clenched, heart breaking in silence. Then I opened the door. The rain followed them inside like a ghost. My mother's skin was cold when I touched her. Her eyes fluttered but didn't focus, her lips trembling as I helped her to the couch. My father hovered near the door, dripping water onto the floor, silent for once in his life. I fetched a blanket and wrapped it around her shoulders. She whispered my name, soft and broken. "Ema, I'm here," I said quietly. My voice didn't shake, even though my hands did. She tried to speak again, but the words slipped into a cough. I poured her some tea, the same blend she used to make when I was little, and held it near her lips. She sipped once, then closed her eyes. My father finally spoke. "We didn't know where else to go." "I know," I said. "That's why you came here." He looked at me for a long moment, searching for anger, maybe mercy. I gave him neither. He lowered his eyes and said nothing more. The night stretched on in quiet fragments, the tick of the old wall clock, the hum of rain easing into drizzle, the sound of my mother's shallow breaths. I sat nearby, not out of affection, but because something deeper than pain held me there. Maybe it was duty. Maybe it was the last echo of love refusing to die completely. At some point, I realized she'd fallen asleep. I watched her chest rise and fall under the blanket. She looked smaller than she ever had before, like all her sharpness had melted into frailty. I wondered if that's what forgiveness really was. Not saying the words, but choosing not to hate when you still have every reason to. My father dozed off in the chair across from her, arms crossed, his head leaning back. His face looked older too, the years of control and pride finally catching up to him. When dawn came, the sky was pale and tired. My mother woke first. She didn't speak. She just looked at me with eyes full of something that wasn't quite regret, but close enough. I nodded. It was the only answer either of us needed. They left quietly after that. My father said, "Thank you," without looking back. My mother lingered at the doorway, her hand resting on the frame for a second longer than necessary. Then she stepped into the gray morning and was gone. The house felt strangely light after the door closed. I stood there for a moment, staring at the empty porch, the puddles fading under the first shy light of day. My phone buzzed on the table. It was Rachel. Her message was short. "You'll never understand love." I looked at it for a long time before typing back. "I do. I just stopped begging for it." I set the phone down, turned toward the quiet cabin, and let the stillness fill me. For the first time in months, I didn't check the cameras. I didn't reach for the phone again. I walked to the corner of the room where the small monitor sat blinking, its faint glow cutting through the half light. My finger hovered over the button for a moment, then pressed it. The screen went dark. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was peace. The snow had melted by the time the letter arrived. I remember the way it felt in my hands, thin paper, heavy meaning. The words were simple. The case had closed in my favor. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like silence finally choosing a side. I made tea and sat by the window. The world outside was still, washed in soft light. For months, I had lived like this. Quiet mornings, long walks, no messages, no noise. I'd learned the difference between being alone and being at peace. The news came 2 days later. The family house had been sold, seized, stripped, and listed under someone else's name. The same house where I'd spent years begging for a voice, now empty of theirs. I read the report once, then folded it neatly and slid it into a drawer. Some endings don't need celebration. They just need space to breathe. I looked around my cabin. The walls were bare, but they held warmth. Every sound here was mine. The kettle's whistle, the soft creak of wood in winter, the whisper of the wind across the porch. No one interrupted anymore. No one corrected my tone or told me I was overreacting. Sometimes I still caught myself listening for their voices. Old habits die quietly. My mother's sigh when she disapproved. My father's measured commands. Rachel's laughter that always sounded a little too sharp. But memory is strange. The further it fades, the gentler it sounds. I thought about what I'd told Rachel that day. I do understand love. I just stopped begging for it. Back then, it felt like a defense. Now, it feels like truth. Love, when it's real, doesn't demand silence. It doesn't punish you for needing kindness. It doesn't vanish the second you start asking for respect. I had spent years confusing control for care, loyalty for love, apology for forgiveness. I finally learned that peace doesn't arrive when they understand you. It arrives when you stop needing them to. The irony wasn't lost on me. They'd spent their lives chasing wealth, image, and control, and in the end, lost it all to the same system they once used to keep me beneath them. The firm gone, the house sold, their names whispered instead of praised. It wasn't revenge, it was symmetry. I walked to the fireplace and added a log. The flames caught slow, then brightened. I thought of that house, its white walls, its perfectly polished floors, its rooms full of quiet resentment. I used to dream of leaving it behind. Now it was gone without me having to move an inch. All I ever wanted, I whispered, was for them to notice when I was gone. My voice barely reached the air, but it carried something final. They finally did. Just too late. For a while, I just sat there, letting the fire crackle. The tea went cold. The light faded into evening. I felt no ache, no anger, no thrill, just stillness. Then my phone lit up on the table. The name on the screen made my chest tighten. Home, the number I hadn't seen in almost a year. I watched it ring, the sound echoing softly in the cabin. I didn't answer. Some calls don't need to be picked up to be understood. The road leading to the old house felt shorter than I remembered. Maybe because I no longer carried the same weight I once did when I left it. The air was still, heavy with that scent of wood and soil that follows a storm. When I pulled over by the gate, the silence was almost too clean. No laughter, no music, no argument. Just wind, brushing through tall, uncut grass. The house looked smaller now. The windows were empty, the paint chipped away by time and truth. For a moment, I stood there with my hands in my pockets, letting the memories wash over me like waves I no longer feared. I used to dream of running from this place, of proving I could live without their approval. I never thought I'd return to find it like this, hollow, forgotten, sold to nothing but weather and memory. I walked up the cracked steps and stopped under the porch light. It still hung there, though the bulb was gone. My father once made me polish that fixture every weekend. He used to say, "A home should shine even when no one's looking." I guess that's what we all did back then. Kept shining for people who never cared to look close enough to see the cracks. The door creaked when I touched it, but I didn't go inside. I didn't need to. The ghost that lived here had already followed me long enough. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a small piece of folded paper. It had only one word written on it: forgiven. Not for them, not really. It was for me, for the girl who cried behind that door, waiting for someone to notice her silence, for the woman who finally realized that forgiveness doesn't erase what happened. It just releases you from the need for it to make sense. I placed the note beneath the porch light, tucking it against the wood where the rain wouldn't reach. My reflection stared back faintly in the window, older, steadier, softer. My eyes didn't sting this time. They'd already shed everything they needed to. For a moment, I just stood there, listening. The world around me felt wide and calm, as if it had been waiting for me to arrive at this quiet. There was no thunder, no shouting, no closure that demanded applause, just stillness. I whispered, I'm done. And I meant it. As I turned to leave, I felt something loosen in my chest. Not joy, not grief, but peace. The kind that comes when you finally stop explaining your pain to people who enjoyed causing it. The kind that comes when you walk away without needing to prove you were right. Driving away, I didn't look back. The rearview mirror showed nothing but a fading outline of the place that once defined me. Now, it was just a house without a heartbeat. Peace doesn't always come from forgiveness. Sometimes it's knowing you survived without turning cruel. If you felt that, thank you for listening. Stay with us for more stories that remind us we're not alone. The morning light slid through the curtains like it was learning how to be gentle again. I had a list on the table, things to do, things to let go of. At the top was a small box of new security cameras. I'd ordered them out of habit, I guess, but this time, they didn't feel like armor. They felt like closure. I walked around the cabin slowly, finding the right corners, the quiet places that once held fear. The first screw went in with a soft click. I watched my reflection form inside the dark lens, still, calm, older somehow. It struck me how strange it was to see myself clearly in something that used to only show danger. When I first put cameras up months ago, I did it because I was afraid. I needed proof, control, protection. I needed to see the world before it could hurt me again. But now, as I tightened each frame and adjusted each angle, it wasn't about safety anymore. It was about memory, about seeing life as it is, not as I was told to feel it. Outside, the trees were bare but beautiful. Winter always did that, stripped things down until only truth was left. I stood by the porch and looked toward the long dirt road. No cars, no voices, just wind through the branches. My hands didn't shake this time. I plugged in the final camera and opened the feed on my phone. The screen blinked to life, and there I was, standing alone in the frame, the light touching my face. I smiled, not for the camera, but because it felt like I was finally looking at someone I recognized. I whispered, "You made it." No one else was here to hear it, but maybe that was the point. There was a time when I couldn't even bear to see myself. Every reflection reminded me of what they said. You're too emotional. You make things difficult. You always need something. I used to shrink at those words, convincing myself that if I stayed small enough, quiet enough, they might love me more. But they didn't. They just got louder, and I got smaller, until there was barely anything left to defend. Now, standing in this small wooden house with new eyes watching over me, I realized something simple. Silence doesn't mean defeat. It means I stopped explaining myself to people who never wanted to understand. I set the phone down on the counter and watched the live feed play quietly. The camera's soft hum filled the room like a heartbeat. My heartbeat. For the first time, I saw my home not as a hiding place, but as something I built. Not inherited, not borrowed, not given out of pity. Every inch of it carried my choice, my rhythm, my name. I thought about my mother's face that night on the porch, my father's voice cracking for the first time, Rachel's message that tried to turn guilt into love. None of it haunted me anymore. They'd spent their years teaching me silence, believing it would make me weak. But all it did was give me space to learn how to listen to myself. The quiet used to suffocate me. Now it sounded like peace. I leaned against the counter and let the moment sink in. No more waiting for apologies that would never come. No more checking the door when the wind changed. Just stillness and a strange kind of gratitude that I'd lived long enough to feel it. The screen dimmed for a second, showing my reflection once more. I stared at the woman looking back, her eyes steady, her shoulders relaxed. For the first time, I didn't see loss. I saw life. "They taught me silence," I whispered. I turned it into strength. The feed steadied, a soft frame of me standing in the kitchen. No movement, no fear, no ghosts. Just a woman and her own calm. And for the first time, I didn't need anyone to reach out. I was already home.